for vaccinated individuals. Have you seen an increase in that, the desire to get vaccinated, and do you think that that will have an effect in that area?
Well, now I'm gonna have a hard time speculating on why people do what they do, and sometimes I don't know why I do what I do. But the amount of time that has changed, it's only been a few days, and so we've been seeing a slow decrement in the number of people who come to our vaccination sites over time. It's neither increased nor decreased since the Deputy Secretary changed the policy for the department late last week.
Let's go back to the phone. So we have Patricia from military.com.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. I know you aren't tracking vaccine declinations, but I'm wondering if you have a sense at all of how many service members may just not ever get vaccinated, and how you're going to handle that. And are you planning for the FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine?
Okay, so I hear two questions in that. Hi, Patty, how are you? So the first part of it, what was the first part of the question?
It was about declination and whether you're going to have a sense of how many service members may just forego the vaccine altogether.
No, we are not tracking declination. You're correct about that. But we are a reflection of society. So I would imagine that those that may be, and we don't know the answer to this, like refusing vaccination, may reflect what we're seeing out in the civilian sector. That said, there's no plans at this time to make vaccine mandatory. If and when the FDA does license the vaccine, we'll make a decision at that time.
Right, next question, Courtney.
Just one follow-up on, I actually had the same question, but if you're not tracking the declinations, I understand that, but do you have any sense of sort of the demographics of who has not been vaccinated among the uniformed military? Is there a certain age range that you're focusing on? Is there a regional difference? Like people who are stationed overseas maybe are more or less likely to get it? Anything like that you can share on who's not getting it?
No, we do have some of that data.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yeah. So again, if you look at the demographics of America, that's the same demographics who are accepting the vaccination. We're finding that while early on, and I think we talked about a little bit when we were in our phased-based schema, we were somewhat concerned about there was some disparity between demographics of who is being vaccinated and what the demographics of the Department of Defense was. What we found, now that we've gone through all of our phases of our schema, that the percentage by race or the percentage by ethnicity or the percentage by age or the percentage by gender, it's generally the same as what we have in the department. So there's no particular demographic that makes you more likely or less likely, with a couple of exceptions. Our physicians are vaccinated at a really high rate. Those who are over the age of 65 are vaccinated at a really high rate. Those who are staff and particular residents of the two Armed Forces retirement homes are vaccinated at extraordinarily high rates.
Almost 100%. As
an example. So what we're seeing and what we're responsible for looks an awful lot like what the rest of America looks like. If you look overseas, on the other hand, every single one of the COCOMs is now vaccinated both partially and fully at rates that are higher than the United States, and in some cases at extraordinarily high rates.
Yeah. And I would add to that, I think the reason why we're seeing this is because, like in the civilian sector, you have access issues. In the military, especially for our armed forces, we don't have that access issue. Right, so they have equal access among groups. So we're just not seeing the same level of disparities that we're seeing in the civilian sector.
And then can I just be clear, when you said there's no plans to make the vaccine mandatory, but if they do, the FDA does approve full authorization or whatever for Pfizer, could you see there being a mandatory for certain elements of the military? So the nuclear force, people who have maybe are assigned to an immediate reaction force or something. Could you see that being implemented?
Yeah, well, I can't speculate at this time with regard to who, if and who would be, it would be mandatory for, but just understand we mandate licensed vaccines for our uniformed service members routinely. So you can imagine that, like other licensed vaccines, we may consider it, but
It could be the whole force then, not necessarily even for
I
particular
can't, make that conjecture now. If and when these vaccines do become licensed, then we'll make a decision at that time.
Next question, Oren.
Do you have any updated information on the prevalence of any of the COVID variants in the DoD population, and what preparatory work are you doing in case there's a need for boosters?
Sure. So we have our own whole genomic laboratories that we use. If you look at the results that we're seeing in our laboratories, both in the United States and around the world, they look very similar to what you're seeing reported by other laboratories. So in terms of the numbers, the frequencies, et cetera, what we're finding in our labs is the same. And in terms of boosters, I'm not going to speculate again on hypotheticals, but if there's some sort of evidence that indicates that they're better safety, better efficacy with 3 doses instead of 2, or periodicity being at some interval like we do for our tetanus updates or those sorts of things, that would be a licensing decision. And as Dr. Dearman has already mentioned, we're not going to get ahead of any licensing decisions, but it's risk-based decision making. So fully licensed and good data, maybe so. Or it may be that, I'm sorry, Dr. Dearman, or it may be that because COVID sort of wipes itself out and isn't an issue anymore, that from a risk-based scenario, it just doesn't seem worth it to vaccinate all of us because of the small but real risks that do come from vaccines.
Right, and if that were something that was determined to be necessary, we routinely give vaccines to our service members, so give annual flu vaccines, for example. So we'd be ready to do that if that came to pass.
But at this point, there's no need to create a sort of a booster stockpile or anything like that? Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, I don't know what it'd be. So again, I hate to speculate on what might be and all the branches and sequels that come out from the what might be. I will tell you, just like when I first talked about this with Secretary McCaffrey back in December, right? We're using the whole laid out of our mass vaccination protocol that we use every year for influenza as this. We would use the same sorts of things for any mass vaccination protocol, whether it's influenza, boosters, or anything else. We have the systems in place.
Abraham.
Yeah, thank you. General Place, there's been talk for a long time about those folks who turned down the vaccine, right? And then all these efforts to reach out to them again and again, and some are starting to get it, right? Does it even matter at this point, since you're rising in the level of those who have been vaccinated, that you go after them so aggressively to get vaccinated? Are you reaching some sort of herd immunity in the military?
Well, the fact that we're still having infections every single day in the hundreds, and the fact that we still have 29 people in the hospital, that's 29 too many in the hospital. That's several hundred more than should be having a diagnosis every single day. So no, I don't think we've reached a point where our efforts need to stop. Our efforts stop when we've eliminated people dying from this disease. Our efforts stop when we've eliminated people being admitted to the hospital for this. And our efforts stop when it stops being a negative aspect to the way that commanders do commander business. So I don't think we're close to that yet. So that's why the efforts at every level of the department are still here.
Thank you.
Do you have anything about the vaccine swap with South Korea? Do you have any plan for?
Well, as I already mentioned, the policy decision makers will decide what policies there are. I'm not aware of any decisions that have been made from a policy perspective. Right now, we're executing the vaccines to our service members and all of our other beneficiaries. So otherwise, I'm not aware of anything.
Do we have any further questions? One more from Abraham.
Yeah, was there any comment that you guys can make about the FEMA vaccination sites and how those are administered?
Yeah, sure. I did mention that they're still active. They're still supporting the FEMA mission at sites in a number of states. And we'll continue that mission as long as FEMA believes that they require our support. As sites have decided that they don't need them anymore, we may move them to other sites where they may be needed, and some, may be returning home. But we anticipate that they're about 8 weeks. And if they need to be re-upped for another 4 weeks, we do that. But we do that site by site and working with FEMA to determine what they require for support.
So is there sort of a major standing down of this FEMA vaccination sites yet, or not quite?
Not at this time. But these are part of the discussions about what is needed by the states, and FEMA makes that determination, and we support. So.
Very good, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much, and a special thanks to Lieutenant General Place and Dr. Terry Adiram. Thank you.